Today in section 2.4 we're going to be writing equations of lines in 3 different ways. So your essential question is, what different forms can I use to write equations of lines? The first way that we're going to look at is the most standard, which is slope-intercept form. So y equals mx plus b is your regular, most common way to write the equation of a line. Now, m represents the slope of your line, so whatever number's in front of x is going to be your slope, and b represents your y-intercept, where the line crosses the y-axis. So, we're going to learn how to write an equation of a line if we're given the slope and the y-intercept. So if we look at this graph here, from looking at this graph, we can figure out the slope and we can also see the y-intercept. So first, we need to identify the slope. Now you can do this 2 different ways. You can use these 2 points that you can see on the graph and you can do the formula for slope. But I find it's a lot easier if you just count the spaces. So slope is rise over run. So we're going to go up 1, 2, 3, and right 1, 2, 3, 4. So we did rise over run, which was 3 over 4. So that is our slope of our line. Then if you look at the graph, where does the line cross the y-axis? What is the y-intercept? And you'll see that b, or your y-intercept, is equal to -2 because this is the point where the graph crosses the y-axis. So our slope was 3/4 and our y-intercept was -2. So all we have to do is take our equation y equals mx plus b and fill in those numbers. So we would get y equals our slope, which was 3/4 x, and then plus -2, or you can write -2. So that would be the equation for your line in slope-intercept form. So if you have the slope and you have the y-intercept, this is the easiest way to write the equation of your line. The second way that we're going to look at today is point-slope form, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Now, y and x always stay in the equation, and you're going to plug in numbers for m, which would be your slope, and then x1 and y1 is just going to be a point that you're given. That's why this is called point-slope form, because you're given a point and you're given the slope, and then you can plug these in. So we're going to learn how to write an equation given the slope and a point. So it says write an equation of the line in point-slope form that passes through 5, 4 and has a slope of -3. So we need to look at what information we're given. They want us to write the equation in point-slope form, which is this right here. And it has to go through 5, 4, that's our point. So this is our x1 and our y1. And the slope is -3, so this is our m. So all we have to do to write our equation in point-slope form is just plug in the numbers. So we're going to have y minus y1, which in this case would be 4, equals m, which is -3, times x minus, and then x1 would be 5. So this would be the answer. This is the equation of our line in point-slope form. Now, we could work this out. We could distribute this -3 and get y by itself by adding 4. And so then that would convert this equation into slope-intercept form. So, but if it asks for point-slope form, this is what they're looking for. They want you to stop right here. So that's all we're going to do right now. Now, writing equations of parallel or perpendicular lines. Okay, so in this example, they want us to write an equation of the line that passes through -2, 3, and is A, parallel to, and B, perpendicular to, the line y equals -4x plus 1. So first, they want us to do an equation of a line that is parallel to y equals -4x plus 1 and goes through the point -2, 3. So let's do that one first. So first we need to think about parallel lines. What do we know about parallel lines? We know that the slopes of parallel lines are the same. So if we look at this equation right here, y equals -4x plus 1, what is the slope of that line? And right now the slope is -4. So if I want to make a line that's parallel to that, I'm going to use the same slope of -4. So for this, I'm going to put slope and then like make a little symbol for parallel. So the parallel slope would be -4 also. Okay? Then it has to go through the point -2, 3. Now, from here, there's two ways that you can do this. I'm going to show you the preferred way that I like to do it because I feel like it's faster. And then I'm going to show you another way so you can choose which way you like better. So the way I like to do it is to use y equals mx plus b because that's really easy to remember and most of you guys already know that. So we would use the point -2, 3 as our x and our y, and we would use -4 as our m, and we're just going to plug those in to our equation. So we would plug in 3 for y, and then we would plug in -4 for m, and -2 for x, and then we have plus b. So right now, if we work this out, we need to solve for b. So we would get 3 equals 8 plus b. Okay, then from here, if I want to solve for b, I would subtract 8 from both sides. So I would get that b equals -5. Now, I have to go back and I have to rewrite my equation because that's what they're asking me to do in the first place. So my equation, if I follow the form y equals mx plus b, I would write y equals m, which in this case is -4, x plus b, which is -5. So I would do -5. So this is my answer. And what that says is this line is parallel to y equals -4x plus 1, and that's true because they have the same slope. But this line goes through the point -2, 3. So that's the way that I like to do it. Another way that you can do this is by using point slope form that we learned just a second ago. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that way in case you want to learn that way. So if we use point slope form, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, we would do the same thing. We would identify the slope, which is -4. And so the parallel slope that we're going to use is also -4 because parallel lines have equal slopes. So that's where we're going to plug in for m. Then you would plug in -2, 3 for your x1 and your y1. So from here we would get y minus, and then we have to plug in y1, which is 3, equals m, which is -4, times x minus x1, which would be -2. So if I do minus and -2, that becomes +2. And then from here, what I would do is I would just work this out. So I need to get it into slope-intercept form still, so I would have to distribute. So I would have y minus 3 equals -4x minus 8. So then I would have to get y by itself, so I would add 3 to both sides. And so I get y equals negative 4x minus 5. So you'll notice this was the same exact answer I got doing it the other way, but I just feel like the other way, using y equals mx plus b, is a lot less confusing because you have less to remember in your formula and less room for error because it's less steps. So again, you guys can choose. If you've already done it this way and you're used to this way, that's fine, but I like to use y equals mx plus b. However, you will need to memorize all 3 forms that we're talking about today for the test. So you will need to know slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. You will also need to know point-slope form, which is this formula right here that we just talked about. So you need to make sure that you know all of these for the test, regardless of which way you choose. All right, now if I want to do perpendicular, then I'm going to do the same process, but I have to think about how perpendicular lines are related to one another. So right now, the slopes of perpendicular lines I know are opposite reciprocals. So the slope of this line up here was negative 4. So the opposite reciprocal of negative 4 would be positive 1/4. So originally my slope was negative 4, but the perpendicular slope, if I write it like this symbol is perpendicular, that would be positive 1/4 because I would take this and I would do the reciprocal and change the sign to positive. So the new slope that I'm going to use in this equation is positive 1/4. Okay, now it's still passing through the point negative 2, 3. So I'm still using that point. So from this point, you can choose whichever method you want to use. You can use y equals mx plus b, or you can use point slope form and plug this in. So I'm going to use y equals mx plus b because that's the way that I prefer. So if I use y equals mx plus b, this is my x and this is my y. So I'm going to plug in 3 for y, and this time I'm going to plug in 1/4 for m because I'm doing the perpendicular. Oh, and I forgot to do my x. Let me go back. Okay, so sorry about that. So 1/4 was my slope. And then for x, I'm plugging in negative 2. And then I have plus b. So if I work this out, I get 3 equals 1/4 times negative 2, which would be negative 1/2. And then plus b. And then to solve for b, I would add 1/2 to both sides. And I like to keep all of my numbers in improper fractions. So if I change 3 to be out of halves, that's the same as 6 halves. So 6 halves plus 1/2 would be 7 halves. So b would equal 7 halves. Or you can say 3.5 if you want to the decimals. Um, so then I need to rewrite my equation. So my equation would be y equals m, which is 1/4 x plus 7 halves, or you can have plus 3.5. So either one of those, that would be your correct answer. So if you chose to do point slope form like we did before, then you should end up with this as your same answer. Now I'm going to go ahead and show that way again, um, just so the people that are doing it that way can check, but if not, you can fast forward through this part. So again, I said my perpendicular slope is going to be positive 1/4, and I'm passing through the point negative 2, 3. So if I do point slope form, that's the y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So then I'm going to plug everything in. I'm going to plug this in for x1 and y1. So I'll have y minus 3 equals m, which is 1/4, times x minus a negative 2 would be plus 2. So then again, I'm going to distribute. So I end up with y minus 3 equals 1/4 x plus 1/2. And then I would have to add 3 to both sides. So I would end up with y equals 1/4 x plus either 3.5 or 7.5. It stays the same. So either way, you end up with the same answer as before. So you choose which way is best for you. Okay. Now, we also have to write an equation just given 2 points. So let's say we don't know the slope. All we have is these 2 points. So it says write an equation of the line that passes through 5, -2 and 2, 10. So if we just have 2 points, what other information do we need in order to write an equation? Well, we always have to know the slope. So the first thing you should do is you should find the slope of these 2 points. So I'm going to label them x1, y1, and x2, y2. And I'm going to use my formula to find the slope. And remember, my formula was y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 to find the slope. Make sure your y's are on top. That's a common mistake. So we would take 10 minus -2 over 2 minus 5. And so this would turn into plus, and so we would get 12 over -3, and if I divide that, I get -4 as my slope. So now I have my slope is -4, this is m, and then I can choose either one of these points to use and figure this out the same way I did previously, using either y equals mx plus b or point slope form. So you can choose which way you want to do it. So you just choose one of the points and you either use point slope form or slope intercept form to figure it out. I'm going to use 210 just because those numbers are positive, so I feel like that makes it a little easier for me. So I'm using the point 210 and my slope is -4. And I'm going to write an equation of a line using those things. So first I'm going to do y equals mx plus b. That's the way I like to do it. And I'm going to plug in this for x and this for y and this for m. So I have 10 equals -4 times 2 plus b. So I plugged in 10 for y, I plugged in -4 for m, and I plugged in 2 for x. Then I'm just going to work it out. So I get 10 equals -8 plus b. I would add 8 to both sides. And so I get b equals 18. So now I need to write my equation. So my equation would be y equals m, which is -4, x plus 18. And that would be the answer. Now I'm going to show this one more time again using point slope form so that you guys can choose. So fast forward this if you're going to do it this way. Okay, so again I'm using the point 210 and my slope is -4. So if I do point slope form, I would do y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So this would be my x1 and my y1. So I'm going to plug these in. So y minus y1, which is 10, equals m, which is -4, times x minus 2. And then I would have to distribute. So I would get y minus 10 equals -4x plus 8. And then I have to get y by itself, so I would add 10. And you see we get y equals -4x plus 18. So it's the same exact answer as before. Okay, we have one more thing to learn, and that is standard form. We kind of practiced this last time. Standard form is when you have ax plus by equals c. You will need to have that memorized for the quiz and the test. And A and B and C are all just numbers. Okay, now when it's in standard form, it's also very important to remember that A, B, and C have to be integers. You cannot have any decimals or fractions when you're writing in standard form. So that is really, 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 really important to remember. Okay, so it says write an equation in standard form, ax plus by equals c, of the line that passes through negative 2, 5, and 4, negative 7. So we have these 2 points, and that's all we have. I don't know the slope. I don't know the y-intercept. So what I have to do is find the slope. So again, I'm going to follow the same steps that I did previously. So I'm going to do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 to find the slope. And this is my x1, y1, x2, y2. So if I do this, I would get negative 7 minus 5 all over 4 minus negative 2. And these are going to turn into plus. So I get negative 12 over 6, which reduces to negative 2. So that is my slope. So from here, I can do the same method as I did before. I can do either point slope form or I can do slope intercept form. I'm choosing to do slope intercept form. So I'm going to do y equals mx plus b. So now I need to choose a point. I'm going to choose negative 2, 5. Doesn't matter which one you choose, you'll end up with the same answer. So I'm going to plug in negative 2 for x and 5 for y and negative 2 for m. So I would get 5 equals negative 2 times negative 2 plus b. And then if I evaluate this, I get 4 plus b. So if I subtract 4, then b equals 1. So my equation would be y equals m, which is negative 2x plus 1. So that's my equation. Now I'm not going to show this one in point slope form, but if you do that, you should still end up with y equals negative 2x plus 1. So you can work it out that way right now and pause the video if you'd like to do that. Now I have to get this equation into standard form. Okay, so right now, my equation looks like y equals negative 2x plus 1. Standard form is ax plus by equals c. So the difference between these two equations is that x and y are on the same side. So I need to think about how would I get x and y on the same side in this equation. Well, I would have to move the x over, so I'm going to add 2x to both sides. And I want it to go ax plus by equals c. So I would have 2x plus y equals 1. And then that would be my final answer in standard form. Now, just for instance, because this might happen in the book, I'm going to clear this out really quick. Um, let's say that you have um, y equals 1/4 x plus 2. And that's your equation that you end up with, and you want to change this into standard form, which is ax plus by equals c. Well, I can move this over to be with my y, just like the other one. And I would get negative 1/4 x plus y equals 2. And that looks like it's in standard form. However, remember we talked about a, b, and c have to all be integers. They cannot be decimals or fractions. So I have to somehow cancel out this negative 1/4. So remember we talked about earlier how you can eliminate fractions is by finding a common denominator and then multiplying all the numbers in that equation by the common denominator. So In this case, we only have one denominator. It's 4. So I'm going to multiply everything in this equation by 4, therefore eliminating all of my fractions. So if I distribute this, I would end up with negative x plus 4y equals 8. And that would be my final answer in standard form. So if you come across one that has fractions in it, remember that in standard form you have to have all integers. Okay, please be sure to write your summary and let me know if you have any questions.